Welcome to SaaStock Local, everybody. My name's Nick, and I am the city leader here for London. So a warm welcome to you to this special edition here in the beautiful Google offices. And I'm going to introduce Gabriel in just a moment, who is looking after SaaStock Local worldwide. But I work for a SaaS company here in London, Pay with Bob, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here today and to host you. And I'm going to tell you just after Gabriel speaks a little bit about the agenda and welcome our speakers for this evening. So, Gabriel.
There we go. Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you everybody for joining us today. As he said, my name is Gabriel. I look after global community for SaaStock. Let's see a show of hands here. How many people here have been to SaaStock, the main conference? Let's see how many hands. There we go. Okay, perfect. So, maybe before I tell you about SaaStock, I'd like to introduce you to our CEO, Alex, who can give you a bit of background. And then I'll tell you a little bit more what we're doing with SaaStock Local and the global community. So,
well, I was going to ask the same question, like how many people have been to SaaStock, and that was it. But so obviously the marketing needs to do a better job. So good feedback. Thanks, guys. That's the reason we're doing tonight. But thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate it, especially on a really hot, sweltering evening. So it's good that we've got a bit of aircon here to help us get through this. But it's actually going to be, I think, really good. And I mean, most of you haven't been to SaaStock, so actually probably a lot of you, I would imagine, don't know what SaaStock is. Is that true? Yeah. SaaStock, effectively the main SaaStock, it's the largest conference in Europe. We help SaaS companies get traction, grow, and scale. We do that by bringing SaaS founders, execs, SaaS companies, loads of VCs, together in one place where you can all kind of learn from one another, learn from the great content, great speakers. We have people like Graham, who spoke in 2017. Will speak again in the future. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, it's really all about kind of learning and coming together and having a really great time in Dublin, because Dublin is fucking awesome. If you're, I'm assuming most of you are SaaS founders, and you're looking to learn and grow your business, then we hope that SaaStock 19 in Dublin in October is the place for you, and probably about 3,900 others. And just kind of wrap it up around SaaStock Local. So actually, before SaaStock started and was a thing, I was running a number of SaaS meetups in London, in Dublin, and in Berlin. In fact, 8 in total over a period of a year. And it was great. The first one we had 120 people come together, learn from some great speakers as well, and realised that actually there was a real community there, and we were doing something at grassroots level that didn't exist. And we did those for like a year and a half, but at the time, initially it was just me. Then we had a couple of people, and it was really difficult to scale. And then we realised that the SaaStock conference thing actually made money, so let's focus on that. And we forgot about the grassroots thing. But now we actually have the resources and the ability to do something at scale, back at the grassroots level, community. We come up with SaaStock Local, which Gabriel's leading, and yeah, this is the first year we're doing it, and so yeah, hope you like it, and hope you learn from it. Cheers.
thank you, Alex. So yes, just to close there, basically what we're doing with SaaStock Local is we are allowing people in different cities around the world who want to build and their own SaaS community and pretty much nurture them to work with us and to connect them to the global event that we do. So how we do that is we provide all of the guidelines, the guidelines and the branding on how to get there. And what we want to get from these events is basically actionable content that really helps people not only learn about how to grow better in SaaS, but also to at the end we have that element of networking. So big thanks to Google Cloud for hosting us and partnering with us today. This is what we want to work towards globally. So yeah, and enjoy the event here today. Thank you.
Okay, we have a slim but well-proportioned agenda for you tonight. So I will let Graham and David do their own introductions, but we are privileged to have Graham Cooke here from Qubit and David Roldán from Google Cloud. And if you have got questions after Graham's talk, you're welcome to ask them, but there will be more times for questions in the fireside chat. So if you've got a burning question, best place for that is in the fireside chat, no pun intended. And then we will at the end have some more time for networking and hanging out here. We'll aim to finish about 9 p.m. Great. So let's pass on to Graham.
Thank you.
You don't need that.
No, I don't need that. There we go. Is that working? Are we live? Mic is hot. Okay, so I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you very much for joining us on such a beautiful, warm evening. And as I made my way over here, I realized that this is actually better to be here than outside, because the talks tonight will be hopefully interesting, but also because air conditioning is a lot better than outside right now. It got too hot. So we can complain about the weather now as Brits, Brit American. But really, what I wanted to do today in exchange for your time for coming here, I wanted to share some learnings in terms of what it's like to create a new category in a SaaS business. It's something that I learned a lot of things the hard way, building Qubit for the last 9 years, and this is almost a letter to myself that I would want to read 10 years ago before I set up Qubit. So just a little bit of context on my background before I go into my 5 lessons. First of all, I always wanted to found a business, always wanted to create products, and I started trying to do that from a very young age, sort of at the age of about 12. I was filing a patent for something to cool cars down, but not getting the money to actually do the patent from my parents. They didn't really understand what I was up to. But then I was trying to build all sorts of businesses, from school newspapers to selling crisps and Cokes to not Coke, but selling crisps and Coke, Coca-Cola at school, all the way through to setting up a company that I tried to sell to Blockbuster Video. And I kind of, was trying to build these businesses, trying to figure it all out. There was very little ecosystem. There was very little infrastructure in the UK, despite the accent I've grown up here. And so, what we've got today is so exciting because there's such an infrastructure. There's so much to learn from. And, communities like SaaStock are phenomenal, what they can do if you're building a SaaS business. And I do highly recommend attending their event. It's one of the highest quality events I've ever been to in this space. And so, the first time I actually found a community that helped me figure out how to build a business was actually applying for a job at Google. I got a job in 2005 after finishing university. I didn't sell my company to Blockbuster Video. They thought they had the secret. They didn't. And I think they should have bought my product because it would help them compete with Netflix in some way. But really, the 5 years I had at Google was just incredible. It was a whirlwind experience of understanding how to build great product, how to understand the size of markets, how to know what real scale is, how to scale to billions and billions of people, of data points, and it was an eye-opening experience. And it created a very entrepreneurial environment. You could really build your own job and what you wanted to do next there. And so it was a great launch pad to start building a company of my own. And I think when I went to launch Qubit with my 3 co-founders from Google, we made a bunch of really obvious mistakes, and this is really what I wanted to share today, because I think these things can help you avoid some of the pains that we've gone through in the journey of building this business. But really what the sort of essence of it all came down to was starting a business where you have sort of blind ambition. You just want to build something and you want to make it big and successful, and you really want to replicate some of the feelings of success you had at Google is actually quite a dangerous thing, because A, it's not easy to replicate the successes of Google. And I think we tie ourselves often to the ambition that we can absolutely be building. We sort of compare ourselves to the biggest and most successful companies in the market, and that can be a very unhealthy and difficult passage to be taken. So, the first lesson here is really around how do you understand the type of solution you're trying to provide to the world. And one of the most important distinctions that we had to go through was, are you building a new category, or are you trying to build into an existing category? Like, it's a very important to say Airbnb is a new category. You know, they had to completely explain to the world what the Airbnb was. You know, it was a very complex problem. Salesforce was a new category. They had to explain what cloud CRM was. It was a complete departure from anything that they that had existed already. Google, for instance, was I think at the 36th search engine. You know, this was just a 10 times better solution than any other search engine. So, you know, it's a really important distinction. Are you building a new category? Well, if you're building a new category, it needs to be 10 times better than the existing category leader. And if you're not building a new category, then you have to be able to explain what your product and category is. And this is a really hard thing to relate to the market. And it's very easy. There's a great tweet I was reading today. It's very easy to jump on this local maxima. This is Brian, the CEO of Qualtrics, talking about this. It's very easy to jump onto this local maxima when you're building a new category. You think you've got this you're getting sales, you're getting sort of you know, momentum on something, but it isn't the thing that you really wanted to do, but you're going to kind of follow it. You can then miss the global maxima. You can miss the really big opportunity. And it's very important you almost consciously understand, I'm building a category, and I'm going to stay true to our mission and direction that we should be taking this product and business in. And so, you know, this is not a hard thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. But, you know, what we're finding in enterprise software as a service is that the Excel era is coming to an end. The idea that enterprise software can be kind of like, yeah, we'll cobble it together, and you know, here you go. It's sort of the UI is not great, but you know, it solves all these problems. You know, that is truly coming to an end. You know, this notion of why do I feel so powerful at home but so incapable of doing my job at work is because we have had fantastic innovation and product design in consumer products, but we've had terrible innovation, or we've had great innovation but terrible product design in enterprise products. But this is truly coming to an end. Being able to design the right product is in having customers love that product, users love that product is so critical. So I'm going to talk more on that. It's probably one of the most important steps in building enterprise software. It's very easy to fall into the trap. I'll talk about the trap. So second lesson. So this is an important one because it's a very early stage genesis of the business that you're creating. And out of interest, how many people here are founders? And how many people are early employees of companies that are okay. And then how many are, and then you're all in enterprise software as a service? Anybody, consumer businesses, consumer? Yeah, a few consumer, okay. And then anybody building on-prem? Good. Just checking. And so, you know, it's got, we got to be in the right room. So the genesis of a business is almost like a ticking clock in terms of how long you get to get the genesis right. And the genesis is what I wish I had gone back and done. Almost the single most important thing I would have gone back and done was build out a proper vision, ambition, values, and purpose doctrine. Actually write it down. And I think that when I was founding the business, we felt like the founders were embodying that. We felt we had that, and we would pass it on by word to the next employees we hired. And we could just keep passing on our values and our vision and our ambition and our purpose. And what you often get is when you're interviewing candidates, you're just sort of, they're not Qubit. They're not Qubit. And in that, it's like, well, what does that mean? I mean, you haven't actually written that down. And I thought it was just too cheesy, in a sense, to write this down. And I wish I had written it down all those years, because I think that I've heard founder after founder who's gone through the same pain I've gone through do that. They've actually written it down and they've codified their values. And I'm going to reiterate this because I think these are the four most important things. The vision is critical because that keeps your North Star to where you should be building your product, your market, your business. Your ambition is really how big do you want to be? How are you going to be seen in the world? And what's the big goal you're trying to achieve? The scale that you want to reach as a business. Your values are the sort of 5 ways that you would bottle up all the people in your company, what they, their behaviors, things like that. And then your purpose is really, you could call it mission. Purpose and mission are interchangeable. But your purpose is really your, why do you exist? I mean, literally, if the world were to remove you, what would replace it? And if the answer is nothing, then that's an alarming thing. And it's a really important thing to ask yourselves, your founding teams, your early employees. If the world were to replace us, what? If we were to disappear, what would replace us? And the more you can align all of those things together, that the purpose of your business is an important purpose to the world. You'll hire higher quality people. If you give them vision, you'll build the right thing. If you have ambition, you'll go for the big goals. And then if you can every year define your strategy for that year. And we have developed all these things, and we've created a 5-pillar strategy. Every year, there's 5 pillars to the strategy. Each pillar represents one of the big outcomes we want to achieve, and there's owners against that. And all these things sound like bureaucracy, and I'm the least bureaucratic. I hate rules. I hate bureaucracy. I hate all these things. They're so critical to do. I mean, it's the 10-year self, 10-year, writing a letter to my 10 years person 10 years ago is really, I wish we got this, because I think we did it, retrofitted it and everything. And then, when you walk around your business, it's like, why do I not feel like you're part of our mission? It's because you hired people that were, not against the principles here. So it's so important. And every year you build up that you haven't done this, it's going to be more painful to retrofit it. But even if you haven't done it, do it. Even if you are going to retrofit it, do it. So, third lesson, don't listen to all your customers. And this is a really complex one. And I'm going to talk about the distinction between customers and users. And I'm sure a couple of you in here really understand that distinction already. But in enterprise software as a service, the bigger your product, the bigger your platform, let's say, the more it costs to buy your technology, the bigger the mistakes you're going to end up making. Because what you're doing here is you're going to find that you get a couple of brands that give you these big, big, big checks. And we had in our first year, we generated $1 million in our first year. Very few companies start off making $1 million. We generated, I think we generated $2.5, $3 million in our second year. I mean, it was just really crazy. We were signing deals that were, in some cases, $1 to $2 million per year tech license. It was enormous contracts, and it feels so good. Like, it feels so exciting to sign deals like that and to find that there's a fit to what you do. But the reality is, these businesses that buy your product at that price are going to take you so far off your roadmap you cannot even imagine. And you're already contending with forces like the engineering team wanting to build their own stuff, the biggest customers wanting to do this very specific project, the sales team wanting to sell everything they could possibly sell. So you get all these competing forces, and it's extremely painful. But I can tell you, the loudest voice in the room is the customer paying you, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And the issue here is, even more exacerbated by signing multi-year contracts. So I've seen really good quality businesses sign, on average, 4-year deals. And then, what happened after 4 years is they realized they made a load of mistakes in that period of time. And then they ended up having to really solve painful problems. And so the higher frequency your learning cycles are, the better you're going to be. And I mean, consumer products have this naturally. If you're a consumer product, you have customers constantly validating whether your product is good or not. They're constantly feeding back to you. They're constantly complaining. They're constantly giving you a check on what you're building. In enterprise software as a service, we don't have those checks as easily. And we really, the more you can build the checks in, even if they're artificial, even if your business does need to cater for multi-year deals, you should definitely make sure those checks are in place to validate whether you're going the right direction. And you have to resist the big deals. And one is okay, a year potentially, but resist doing multiple big deals, because then it gets really, really complicated. One of the most effective things we did to really expand our business about 5 or 6 years into it is to do a customer segmentation. And so we were able to, first of all, define the ideal customer. That came out of understanding all the segments of our customers. So we looked at lifetime value, we looked at usage of the product, we looked at all sorts of other metrics, and we were able to create essentially a matrix that helped us define what the ideal customer was for Qubit. And we figured out the size of business, the way they use it, the industries they're in, and we went from a company selling to every customer, every industry, every size, and we ended up about 3 or 4 years ago verticalizing. We created 6 industries that we served: luxury, fashion, health and beauty, airlines, travel, and gaming. We focused on those 6. We focused on businesses that do about 250 million in online revenue, and we became the industry leader in many of those verticals as a result of that focus. And so it's a very, very important step to take. And we found a lot of common patterns with these types of customers, and we saw that they had certain types of teams, that we knew that we'd use certain parts of the product, and it just gave us a whole new type of focus, and that paid off massively. And I remember at Google, when I was at Google in 2006, we were looking at a verticalization strategy as well. And Google was doing the same thing. 2006, the sales team was selling to every brand, every size. Salespeople had like 1,000 to 2,000 account patches that they would sell to, and they went to having 30 to 50 accounts. So you went from 1,500 to 30 to 50 accounts. And everybody complained, it was a disaster, and everybody was upset. But in the end, everybody started to do much, much better. So when you tell your sales team you're only going to have a patch of 10 accounts, 20 accounts, and you've had an unlimited patch, you'd be enormous pain and complaining, but I've never not seen it work. I've never not seen that end up creating a more successful strategy. So lesson number 4, build for users, not companies. And I'm sure a lot of you, you've experienced this, you know this. This is a well-documented, well-written about topic today. But if you don't really get the nuance between users and customers, then it's critical you do that. There's some incredible thinking and product design thinking here that is very important. But users at the end of the day are the ones who use your product, will buy your product, and will renew your product. And again, software as a service or enterprise, pre-software as a service, enterprise used to be you'd sell the big deal into the senior role, the VP, the CTO, and you would end up with a large deal, and then everybody would be forced to work with that product for a few years. That's going away now. In the time we've been selling our technology, we've seen the market go from usually like 1 to 2 decision makers to 5, 6, 10 decision makers. Any one of these decision makers can veto your sale. And so being able to groundswell through users is such a more effective approach in terms of reducing the risk of not getting the deal. And you see the biggest software as a service companies are really effective at that. Slack. Who uses Slack? A lot of you, exactly. So Slack is a phenomenal example of user-centric design that focused on the mechanics of usage to understand how quickly that product would grow through an organization. And they actually figured out that 2,000 messages in a 5-person team was the magical critical mass for that succeeding. So if 2,000 messages were sent in that group of at least 5, then Slack knew that account would be successful. It would grow across the organization. And so that's the sort of user-centric metrics to complement your design that you need to be thinking, whatever your product is. It's apps. If your users are developers, if your users are marketers, if your users are HR, whatever, you must think in user-centric design. Prototyping, validating the prototypes before you write code. Engineers want to write code. Let the engineers be part of the prototyping and design process. This is such an effective method to building the right product. And it feels uncomfortable. Engineers don't like when they're not writing code. But if they're part of the process of designing it, they'll build the right product. You'll get there. You'll get to your goal faster. Even if you feel like you're writing less lines of code and your velocity is going down, you get to the outcome you need to much faster. And that was a huge turning point for us. And then really my 5th lesson is just check yourself. It's so important to check in with yourself and the people in your business. I heard this quote the other day that most founders want to build products, and the burden of having to build products is they have to hire and manage people. And I definitely connected with that because for me, I've always been product system. Let's build something that scales. We scaled, Qubit to 800 million users. Are impacted by our personalization technology, and it's something that I've always thought about that. We must get to that point, but in reality, it's the people, and it's how you organize the system of people in your business that's going to make it a success or not. And so I really underestimated the importance of a management team, the leadership team, and it's something that I've worked on over the years of building into the business. And you're going to find that making those investments in management teams and leadership teams is so critical because it's how you carry the business. And as a founder or CEO or founder, C-level founder within your business, you can really overlook this one, and getting ahead of it is critical. And I think that what you'll find is that it's critical when the times get hard because the leadership team, the founder, and the management team will take the burden off you as an individual. And the sort of burden that you get as a founder, CEO, leader building a business is that you'll be completely unprepared for times when the employee morale, dissatisfied customers, demanding investors can have on you as an individual. I mean, if you think you're going into running your own business to be your own boss, think again, like for real. You'll never have more bosses. You'll never have more of a burden on you. I mean, my time at Google was glorious in terms of the lack of burden I had in my life. And so I really think that it's a tough and lonely thing, and ultimately, you really need to be thinking about how you build the people around you to do that. And you will also find that your management team that you have today is not the management team that you necessarily have tomorrow. You will need to upgrade and change the team over time. This is how the reality of it works. And being honest and frank with people on that, even up front about that, is so important because I think you must evolve the team with with where you are in the business, the stage of the business, and the more upfront and honest you can be about that, the better. I really think that the emotional burden, I think, is now becoming a lot more open about mental health and I think it's getting that out in the open, about mental health, anxiety, depression. These things are all critical. I mean, I've had times where I was practically like fainting in fundraising meetings, going between multiple VCs, getting no's all over the place, and really thinking I can't do this. I can't breathe. It's so hard to do some of these things, and it's you feel like you can't show any weakness to anyone. And I wish I had known that you can be a little bit more of a person, of a reality, and really sort of, I think it's a lot healthier how that's kind of evolving now. So, bring that into the open, and you'll create a lot more of a healthy organization. I think really finally, some of the best advisors I got were actually books and self-learning. There were some really pivotal moments in developing a change. It's going back to creating a category. I think creating a new category is so hard. And out of interest, who's creating a new category in the room? It's crazy creating a new category. It's so hard. It's so long. You're trying to explain to people what you're doing. And I read some great books on how to think about that. And it was Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen, helps you understand the evolution of tech cycles and where you are. The Hype Cycle, another really effective book. Crossing the Chasm, another really critical book. And then Seven Powers by Hamilton Helmer. And these books not only were such important guides for how we should build a business, build our product, understand our market, I made everybody read them, everybody in the team read them, and that created a pool of knowledge. And then I reached out and worked with half these authors. So authors are actually incredibly open to working with companies. Jimmy Allen is the other one, Jimmy Allen from Founders Mentality. 50% of these people I've talked about, I worked with these people and continue to work with them. And they love to see their theories put into practice in your businesses. And it's probably one of the most effective steps we've ever taken in terms of thinking through a lot of things. So I'm going to, am I in time? Yeah, I'm on time, okay. I'm going to finish there. I think my sort of parting words here are that, even though you have 100 bosses effectively, I think that's the average feeling I have above me is 100 bosses. Even though you have 100 bosses, I wouldn't do it any other way. Literally wouldn't do it another way. I love the opportunity to call the shots. I love the opportunity to build and have impact on the world and to employ people and work with great people. And it's really something that's super exciting. So, I highly recommend it if you really are able to, sort of think through some of these. I hope I've helped you reduce some burden in making decisions. And I guess at this point, I say thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. We do have some time for quick questions now. If anyone's got any questions, or you can save them for later. Anyone? Just one here. One here. Okay.
Yeah, I was just curious, when you arrived at the point when you were segmenting your verticals,
Yes.
What methodology or what approach did you use and what got you to those verticals?
Yeah. So we have a fantastic head of strategy who really worked on figuring out it was super data driven. It was just look at the data, look at the lifetime value metrics, and we actually saw a 10x difference in lifetime values, forecasted lifetime values between clients, and then we were able to distill the sort of attributes of the clients that were worth 10 times more. And that was a calculation based on usage, renewal rates, size of deal, and so it was purely data driven, looking at then the common attributes, and then looking at the attributes of the extremes. So these were really good, these were really bad, and then starting to sort of map together a landscape that came off the back of that. And that landscape was, the team structure. So I think this is probably quite a common one in enterprise. But what is the team structure of the people involved in your product? So, do you need a tech team? How often are they involved? Do you need a design team? Do you need a marketing team, a commercial team? And we found that our product was fairly, is quite technical. It requires an understanding of some of the more complex. You have to know what APIs are. You have to know what SQL is, JavaScript, to kind of really operate it. But we're selling this product to non-commercial teams, non-technical teams. So that was obviously an issue. And this helped us understand if a company has no technical team at all, this is really not going to work. This is going to completely flop. So we were able to say, that's bottom left-hand quadrant on the y-axis. And on the x-axis, it was really looking at things like, it was actually looking at a softer metric, like willingness. What's the company's willingness and interest, almost from the board, the CEO, the management team, to use personalization? What's their willingness to actually create a transformational customer experience? And you'll find a lot of businesses were like, I don't care, just buy more ads on Google. And it's like, okay, well, you're probably not going to buy into what we can do for you. And then so you kind of get that matrix. And so I think it's sort of a very data-driven exercise that results in a 2x2. But we actually spoke to a very well-known, very big consulting company to help us with this, and they wanted to charge a lot of money. And I'm sure you've got a team that can actually really get behind this. It's super exciting.
Just one other question. Do you think you could have done that sooner to get to the same results, or do you think you had to be at a certain scale to be able to perform the exercise?
Yeah, I think there's an analogy that I've always stuck in my head, which is this idea: if you're on a boat and there's not a lot of wind, and you're trying to move the rudder and steer the boat, there's no wind. it's not going to do a lot to move the rudder around and see which way to go. So you have to have a wind, you have to have a breeze to kind of be getting you in a direction that you can kind of see what works and what doesn't work. So there is definitely that sort of Wild West period where you need to, you don't want to over segment in that initial period. So I think sort of, 1 to 2 years in, this starts to make more sense to do that. I would definitely recommend ideal customer. It's almost up there with the vision, mission, purpose, ambition, values. Defining your ideal customer, even if it's a completely soft way of doing it. There's a book by a professor at Wharton, I believe it's called Ideal Customer. His name's Peter Schaefer, I think. And he really explains this in a very simple way. And if you can build that ideal customer, you don't need to do the segmentation. Because you just kind of go, we're looking for that type of customer first, that type of user first, and then you'll build the segmentation.
Amazing. One at the back.
Just a quick one. Thanks a lot for that. Can you tell us a bit more about the patches you were talking about, going from like 1,500 to 30 patches or something? I don't really know what. I think that's a new term for
Patches.
Are you like on the?
Oh yeah. Like sale. Yeah. So no, but I was comparing that to Google. So Google had, when I was at Google 2006, it was sort of some sales teams would have 1,500 accounts to go after. So they have 1,500 accounts, and so I see a lot of SaaS companies that just say, your patch is this industry, whatever size you want, it's your industry. And I've seen every sales rep who has sort of unlimited or near unlimited patch doesn't do well. And I see this pattern over and over again. It's this weird, semi-paradoxical situation where if you have 1,500, let's say you have 300 accounts, 500 accounts, you feel like, oh, I have so much opportunity here. I can sell to these 500 businesses. But what you end up doing is every time you hit a slight blocker, you switch to another account. Hit a blocker, switch to another account. Hit a blocker, switch to another account. And you never really work it, the actual opportunity. And so every time our best reps at Qubit have often, gone from 100 to 10, and then been super successful with 10 accounts, because it was like, that's it. That's all you've got to make hay.
You have one question over here?
Thank you, that was great. So you said that the management team is going to change over time, right?
Yes.
And it's not going to be the same team when you're a startup or scale up or
Yeah.
How'd you convey that idea to them? It's join my team for 5 years and then get fired, or what is it?
Yeah.
And then the other question is why?
Yeah.
So how can you justify you being the only person who stays at
Great
the
question.
same role as the
Yeah.
company scales? Why can't other people want to do the same?
Yeah, so I think that's a really, really good question, because I've constantly asked myself, am I the right guy to be leading this business? And so I'll tackle your first question first, which is, how do you manage the expectations of the people you hire in your leadership and management teams? Well, I think two things that I've seen quite effective are you position it as this is a journey to build your career. You're going to join. You're not often your early team isn't super experienced. This is a journey to build your career up, and in 4 years you might find that this is not the right place for you anymore, and you want to take and build your career up in another way. And you kind of have that honest conversation at the hiring stage. We will go in a direction that might go beyond your skills. And it happens in a whole host of roles. And I find that the way positioning it as their journey, their career, their learning, their brand, it kind of almost takes it out of the emotional connection of being part of the company. And it's moving away from this idea of the company's a family to the company's a sports team. And it's a much healthier position to be part of the sports team. And you have a career with that sports team, and then you transfer. And I think the more honest candor you can have around that, the better. It's harder with founders. It's harder with your founding team, because you'll have situations where your founders will not be able to be in the roles they're in, and including the CEO founder. And so what you need to do there, and I've seen situations where founders remain in the company in non-leadership roles, and situations where founders have left the company and done new things. Like in my case, we had 2 founders leave. because we changed the management team, we changed the structure of the leadership team, because we needed expertise in different areas as the company evolved. And I do the regular check-in as a CEO founder, and I communicate with my leadership team, my board, on the gaps that we need to fill. These are my weaknesses. This is what I'm good at. This is my vision. This is how I want to drive what I think is to the right direction of the business. But I know I'm not good at this, and I'm not good at this, and not good at this. I need to hire. And I think, I wanted for a long time to hire a COO at Qubit, because I'm much more of a product, strategy founder type. And I wanted to complement my lack of sort of organization, structure with the COO. And it took a year to find that person. And I think you have to ask yourself, what are your superpowers? And then what are your kryptonite? What's your kryptonite? And how do you complement your kryptonite? And I think as a CEO founder, if you can complement your kryptonite, you can keep having your superpower, and your superpower is unique, then it makes sense. And I regularly discuss that with the board.
Fantastic. All right, I think we'll end for questions there. And if you have got further questions, do ask them in the fireside chat. So hold on, write it down. But let's say thank you to Graham.
Thanks, guys.
Round of applause. And then we do David Roldán from Qubit.
Feels a bit dramatic coming from the back all the way to the front, but trust me, what I have to say is not nearly as entertaining as what Graham had to say. But thanks everyone for being here. Obviously, great work by SaaStock team and everything they've done to support the SaaS community. But then also, we've been very happy to be working with them. I know when I first came into contact with SaaStock, I suppose a few years ago, kind of when they just started going, it was a wonderful chat with Alex, and I remember him kind of talking about like, hey, here's the vision, and it was like loud in the background, and he was at a conference, and I was like, the passion that this guy has and the vision that he has for how he wants to develop and create an ecosystem really meshed well with a lot of our own belief system. So for us, it just made a whole lot of sense to figure out how do we work together. So just a little bit about myself. So I've been at Google nearly 4 years. Prior to that, worked at Rackspace, joined them when they were already a scale-up. But it afforded me the opportunity to do a lot of cool things, because by the time I left, they had like nearly 7,700 employees, so it allowed me to get into all sorts of trouble, do things that I probably had no business doing, like building and starting, launching from scratch a Latin American business unit that eventually became $50 million a year business. But just, the learning, right, and that opportunity to grow. So my team and what I'm ultimately responsible for is leading all our cloud startup ecosystem work for all of Europe. So most of what we do, I'd say, is firmly wrapped around technical enablement. And if there's anything that we've learned, which in the unique position that I'm afforded to be in, and to be honest, quite privileged, is that get the opportunity to talk to founders every day. Probably talk to someone in the neighborhood of 200, 230 or so per quarter, and you start to develop some muscle memory around kind of trends and what's working, what's not, and through that, if there's one thing that holds true, it's ultimately when it comes to building product, certainly building something that people want. And Graham touched on something super important, which is build for users and not for companies. And I can really connect with that from kind of my own failings of trying to build things to just working with a lot of founders. And that's something that I think is tremendously important, and for people almost as they're thinking about their own kind of North Star and where they want to go to. So it can also help to serve as a bit of a compass, because we do live in a world where there's a lot of hype, and with that hype comes a bit of confusion. And it's easy to get kind of distracted. So I love this tweet because to me it really rings true and speaks so much to me. But the reality is that ultimately it's still kind of down to some of the fundamentals, which is asking the question, which is what problem am I trying to solve, right? And then from there, our team, we really try and get kind of set in motion around, well, what are the things that we can do to help people on their journey? The journey is going to be difficult regardless of what happens. So if there are things that we can do to aid people, whether it's earlier in the journey and building an MVP to how to scale things from an infrastructure perspective, or building in more capabilities to extract insights, then we certainly want to be able to do that. So, how many people have gone down the rabbit hole of using a tool, whether it was a day, a week, month, God forbid, longer than that, only to find out that it wasn't the right tool for the right job? It's all right, you don't have to out yourself. I already know because you're shaking your heads. But that's what we want to try and be able to focus on. We want to try and allow people to focus on their users. We want to allow people to try and focus on ultimately what's going to delight those users so they don't have to focus on managing global infrastructure. So ultimately be able to ship the right code. So that's where we tend to put the majority of our time in. And again, a lot of that comes through the form of technical enablement, whether architecture design sessions, or just ultimately trying to figure out how do we help people as they're running into different roadblocks, as they're building out even their product roadmaps, certainly from a technical capability standpoint. And I think the magic of all that